And let me repeat that for the benefit of all. Again, this is Business 3000. It's statistical analysis for business. It is intended and really is only applicable if you are participating or earning your Bachelor's of Business Administration in either logistics and supply chain management or healthcare management. And I was looking through the class roster, and there's a couple of you. One is listed as business administration, and then the other is listed as computer information systems. So I want to make sure that you are in the right course. But again, this is a different format that we have started using last semester, where students are encouraged to attend this live Zoom session, which will be on Thursdays from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The reason we began offering the live Zoom option was students, one, seemed to be struggling with the course content, but then also wanted to have the interaction with the instructor. So students are encouraged to attend and participate. You'll be given opportunity to ask questions on your homeworks, on various assignments. But primarily, honestly, this time is for sharing the course content and doing lecture. But if you cannot attend the live Zoom session, it is being recorded, and then I will process it and post it up to D2L by noon on Fridays. So I am Laura Ralston. I am a professor of mathematics at Georgia Highlands College, and I will be the instructor for the semester. So I do want to begin tonight with kind of an overview of the course. If you have questions, please feel free to unmute and speak. You may also type them in the chat. However, sometimes when I'm sharing my screen, I cannot necessarily see the chat. So if I overlook it, please just unmute and speak, and I'll be happy to try to answer your questions. I am going to minimize the screen so you guys can see it. Okay, so this is Business 3000, Statistical Analysis for Business. It is spring semester. We're in an e-classroom / online format, again, to try to accommodate those students who are perhaps already working in healthcare management or logistics and supply chain and already work a job and are not available to attend the live session. We will meet via Zoom on Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. It will be recorded, and the recordings are posted by noon on Fridays. Again, I am Laura Ralston. I'm a professor of mathematics. You can see my contact information there on the screen. I do have an office phone. It does ring directly into my office. I am housed, as far as that physical office location, on the Cartersville campus of Georgia Highlands, which is off of Highway 20 in Cartersville. I do try to maintain regular office hours so that you have access to me. I do have some of those on the weekend, again, to try to accommodate those who are working. So you'll see that I do have office hours in Zoom on Sundays from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. The link is in the available in the course or on my office hours. But you are welcome to drop in if you have questions related to the course content, related to an assignment. If you just have a question in general during that hour window of time. It is a first come, first serve. And so you may have to wait for a moment if I'm with another student. On Mondays and Wednesdays, I teach from home. I teach Stat 1401, Elementary Statistics 1 via Zoom in this same format. So I have virtual office hours from 2 to 3:30 on Mondays, and also on Wednesdays, excuse me, from 8:30 to 9:30. during those virtual office hours, I am usually sitting at the computer. I'm logged into my email. I'm logged into D2L so that I can read discussions, respond to emails. I also can take phone calls. You can call my office and leave a detailed voice message, including your callback number, and I'm able to return that phone call. I also have Zoom office hours on Wednesday afternoons from 1:30 to 3 p.m. in Zoom. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I actually physically go to the campus in Cartersville and teach two classes in a pure face-to-face format. So I have office hours scattered before and after those from 8:45 to 9:15, also 11:30 to 12:15. And on Tuesdays, I'm there from 2 to 4. On Thursdays, after class is over, I do actually come home so I can kind of get a little bit of a breather before we meet at 6 o'clock. I do plan to come into Zoom at 5:30. From 5:30 to 6, I've dedicated that specific time for you to come in if you have questions about the content, assignments, and so forth. So the 30 minutes prior to class starting, I'll be in the Zoom session available to answer questions. So hopefully other office hour times can be available by appointment if they're with a little bit of notice and within reason. I prefer not to have one at 3 o'clock in the morning. All of the course information, all the content, all the material that you need for this course can be found within Desire to Learn, or D2L, which is the learning management system that I anticipate most of you are familiar with. I would anticipate that most of you have been at the institution perhaps for at least one semester. If not, I am going to show you how to navigate into Desire to Learn and navigate the course at the end of this particular presentation. Excuse me. You are able to email through D2L, and that is acceptable. I do monitor that email. I probably monitor my regular Georgia Highlands email more so. So if you prefer to use that, that would be helpful. But it would also be great to know that you're in Business 3000, because I do have 4 other classes. And so knowing that you're in Business 3000 will help expedite my response to you. So Business 3000, what is this class about? It's entitled Statistical Analysis for Business. So we're going to look at, it's more of an applications-based course in statistics, statistical analysis, and we focus on business applications. How could you use this in the business world? And for some of you, if you've recently had Stat 1401, you may see some overlaps in the topic. This particular course, thankfully, does not require a knowledge of calculus. We do talk about a lot of different techniques. Again, it's kind of a survey course where we talk a little bit about a lot of things, from descriptive statistics, probability distributions, hypothesis testing, analysis of variance, chi-square, correlation and regression. We also talk about a very different topic called non-parametric test. So again, if you've recently had Stat 1401, there is some overlap in the content, but again, we go a little bit deeper and also talk about some things that we just kind of glass over or skim through in Stat 1401, which is a prerequisite for this course. So do you have any questions before I continue? Again, you can unmute and speak, or you may type it into the chat and I think I'll see it. Okay, we do have to connect this course with a textbook. The textbook we've connected it to is Introductory Statistics. It's through a company called OpenStax. It is an online open educational resource. So it is a free textbook. However, it is not of great quality. It's the only one that was available on the market that was free at the time this course was created, and we were trying to keep student expense as low as possible. You will never hear me refer to the textbook. You'll never hear me say, go to page so-and-so. Okay, so personally, I wouldn't bother. You can access it online. You can download it as a PDF. If you are one of those that's just got to have a book, you can purchase one at a low cost directly from the publisher. Or if you download it as a PDF, you can take it to Kinko's or Staples somewhere and have it printed. Again, I do not necessarily recommend at all that you get it. All of the materials you need, the resources to be successful, are in D2L. You will need a calculator. It doesn't have to be a fancy calculator like the TI 83 or 84 Plus. That's the one that traditionally within the math department we were recommending. But as long as you have a basic 4-function calculator that will do some addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, you're good to go. Okay, so if you have the TI 83 or 84 Plus, that's great. It's what I use, but that's what I learned on, and that's what I'm issued. So, but you need a basic 4-function calculator to at least be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. We will be using a statistical software known as Minitab to do all of our statistical analysis. In today's world where we have technology and we have what they refer to as big data sets that are just humongous, have, you know, hundreds of thousands of data values, most people or nobody in their right mind does it by hand anymore. We do not perform hand calculations. So there are a variety of statistical software packages available on the market, but Minitab is probably, in my opinion, one of the most user-friendly. This particular program that we use is web-based, so it does not matter whether you have a Mac or whether you use a Windows machine. If we were on campus, we would be in a computer room because it's loaded on all of the computers at Georgia Highlands, but you will be able to download a free version or have free access on or after Monday, January 23rd, which may affect your ability to do some of the assignments. I may have to make an adjustment. I'm hoping to see if I can get you access earlier, but I don't know if I can do that because I have to go through our IT department. But once they can identify that you are enrolled in Business 3000 and that you are a student at Georgia Highlands, then you get free access to the web version. It's called app.minitab.com. And again, you'll have access 24/7 on any machine as long as you have internet access. So when you set up your account initially in Minitab, you will need to use your Georgia Highlands College email address. Again, that's how they verify that you are a student. At the moment, Minitab recommends that you use Google Chrome as the browser whenever you're using app.minitab.com. I do not know. I haven't tried to use it with Microsoft Edge. The institution no longer supports Internet Explorer. So again, the recommended browser is Google Chrome. Please do not rush out tomorrow and try to download Minitab. You will not be able to do it. I have to get you the access. And again, I'm going to try to do that as soon as possible, hopefully before that January 23rd date. All right, let's talk about how you're going to get a grade. That's probably something important that you'd like to know about. I noticed that some of you have already taken the syllabus or the orientation quiz. Thank you for doing that. If you have not taken it, there is a quiz inside D2L that just ask you questions about the syllabus, you know, things about how you're going to get a grade, how you're going to contact the instructor, that kind of thing. That syllabus quiz has a very special purpose. I am required to report your attendance / participation in Business 3000 by Wednesday, January the 18th. And in order to verify that, other than the fact that you're in the Zoom room, I have to have you do an assignment. And so the assignment that I have you do is that syllabus or orientation quiz. Also, there is a Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor quiz that I need you to take, because you are going to be required to take the proctored midterm using Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor. And so the quiz does two things. One, it confirms that Respondus works with your computer, and you know that well in advance of the midterm. But it also, that quiz just goes through kind of the rules and guidelines for taking a test using Respondus. So neither of the quizzes that you're asked to complete here at the very beginning have any kind of math or statistical content on them. They're more policies and procedures. Those two quizzes are due by Sunday, I believe, if I remember correctly. You also have, there'll be about, throughout the semester, we'll have about 12 different lessons over the content. And so each of those lessons has a corresponding homework assignment. It's set up as a quiz in D2L. They are 10 points apiece, and each one is worth 120 points. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. The midterm, which is proctored through Respondus Lockdown Browser, is worth 150 points. And again, I'll give you more details in just a minute. The final exam is only covers the last 2 units and is also worth 150 points. And then this course, because it is applications based, you have some mini projects. There are actually 7 of them that you will be asked to complete throughout the semester, and they're 50 points apiece. So you have the opportunity throughout the semester to earn up to, or a total of, 800 points. Now let me give you a little bit more detail about some of those assignments. The homework, again, is in D2L. You do not need any kind of additional or outside software. Everything is in D2L. You have 3 attempts on the homework, and only the high score is recorded. If you've recently had Stat 1401, that course is designed where there is a set of practice problems along with the set of homework problems. For Business 3000, we do not have the practice problems, but you have the 3 attempts on the homework. So this is what I would tell you. You know, you attend the lecture here in Zoom, or you watch the video. Then I would say do the homework the first time. See how you do. If you're struggling, then maybe go back and review your notes, reach out to me, ask questions for clarification, ask questions in class to get clarification, and perhaps then do the second attempt, you know, and then repeat that process. And only the high score is recorded. Now, you don't want to wait till 9 o'clock on Wednesday, 9 p.m. on Wednesday to start doing that, because your homeworks are due on Wednesday nights by 11:30 p.m. So for example, the lesson we cover tonight, that homework at the moment is due next Wednesday, January the 18th at 11:30 p.m. So if you wait till the last minute trying to get 3 attempts in and reach out to me to get extra help or whatever, could be challenging. So it's better if you'll kind of pace yourself out. There's a weekend included in there. And again, I try to do that to be respectful of your time, especially if you are working a job or have other family obligations. The midterm will be proctored through Respondus Lockdown Browser. It's taken in D2L. It will only cover the first 2 units or modules, which are Module 1 and Module 2. And you'll usually have a 4 to 5 day window to do that. If I remember correctly, you get, it's either 2 hours or 2.5 hours. I can't remember right off the top of my head, and I forgot to look. The final exam only covers the last 2 units, modules 3 and 4. It is not proctored, but you'll again take it in D2L outside of class time. And again, the mini projects, which is often the area of assignments where students struggle, actually allows you to apply the concepts and the various analyses that we are learning and talking about to a specific data set. I have one data set that is used by those who are in healthcare management. I have a different data set for those who are in logistics and supply chain management. They're related to those 2 fields tangentially maybe, but then at least you get to see how you can use what you're learning in your particular field. You do work on those outside of class time, but we will be looking at examples. In class, you'll have multiple opportunities to ask questions about those assignments. You'll also have the option to come in to office hours and Zoom or virtually if you have questions. So do you have questions before we continue? Okay, some other kind of generic policies that I am required to make students aware of, and I've omitted some of these because we don't necessarily need to talk about children on campus, the fact that the campus is tobacco free because we are not physically there, at least I'm not. But the first policy is the extended absence policy. If for some reason you need to be absent more than 5 consecutive class meetings, you know, heaven forbid, but if you were to have a emergency appendectomy, or your employer needs to send you to an alternate location or change your work schedule, and you need to miss more than 5 consecutive class meetings, there is a form that we can fill out. That shouldn't be an issue with this class because you could still complete the work in the online format. The early warning project or the early alert project is something that Georgia Highlands started years ago to try to help students be successful in their courses. It gives you an opportunity to know how you're doing. So there are 2 points in the semester where I'm required to provide information to the administration. The first one, as I mentioned earlier, is solely based on your attendance or participation in the class. And that report I have to have completed by next Wednesday, which is January the 18th. Again, the way that I do that is through your completion of the syllabus or orientation quiz. The second deadline, which is about 40% into the semester, occurs Wednesday, February 22nd, and I report to our student success centers how you're doing in the class. That looks not only at your participation or maybe attendance to the e-classroom. It looks at, are you doing the assignments? how are you doing on the assignments? Are are you doing well? Are you struggling? And so it's an S or U. S is satisfactory, meaning you're doing what you need to do to be successful in the course. U would imply that you're struggling. Maybe you are not doing the assignments and need some extra assistance. Usually what happens if I report you as a U, I reach out to you, but also one of the student success coaches reaches out to you to see, if you need any help, if you're aware of some of the resources that are available, which I'm going to talk about briefly in a minute. The other deadline that's important to you is the withdrawal deadline. If for some reason you need to withdraw from the course, life gets in the way. Again, your employer changes your hours or increases your workload, and you just can't finish out the course. The deadline for withdrawing to receive a graded W is Monday, March the 13th. Student conduct, academic integrity. Again, most of your assignments you are allowed to use your notes and things on, so hopefully there's not an issue with cheating or the appearance of cheating. But if there is, then we have to have a conversation. It's documented. It can go on your academic record and follow you from institution to institution. In this setting, sometimes it's kind of hard, but we'll try to be as respectful of each other as possible. Again, if you have a question, please, you can raise your hand. You can just unmute and speak, or you can type it into the chat and we'll try to deal with it that way. Sometimes it's just awkward here within Zoom. Disability, if you have the need for special accommodations, maybe you need extended time on test, larger print, that kind of thing, I'm more than happy to make those accommodations. I do need to be aware that I need to make them. And so normally that information comes to me through our student support services, specifically disability. And so if you're new to the institution, be aware that just because you had services at the high school level, you do not necessarily have them at the college level. So you have to go through a process to have those things approved. But if you already have them in place, please be sure to let me know what, if any of those accommodations you would like to use throughout the semester. And again, I'm happy to make those accommodations. Sometimes students are applying to new or different programs. Maybe you're trying to go on to do your master's degree or whatever. If you happen to need your grades early prior to the final grade deadline, which is mid-March, again, it's a form to make the request. I'm happy to do it. I just need to know to do it. All right, other resources. This is important. Guys, if you begin to struggle with this course content, okay, please reach out sooner rather than later. And honestly, I should probably be the first person that you reach out to. I am considered the subject matter expert. Okay, I have been at Georgia Highlands 24 years, and the majority of that time I have taught statistics. I'm currently teaching only statistics. I teach the introductory course. I teach Stat 2401, which is the elementary statistics 2, and then I teach this course. And I suppose sadly for you, you're stuck with me because at the moment I'm the only one who teaches this particular course at the institution. So please reach out, whether you do that by email, by discussion in D2L, by phone call, coming in to Zoom during office hours. Okay. Ask questions. Sometimes students, and I know especially with the BBA students, some of you kind of already have a way to work together or work in a study group. That is fine for you to study together. Okay, the intent is not necessarily for you to do your assignments together or, you know, as a group, but you are able to study together. But it's important that you go to that study group prepared. You don't want to just sit and watch someone else do the work or show you how to work the problem. You need to actually work the problem yourself. Working, having somebody else do it is not the same as actually doing it yourself. We also offer free tutoring. They do it virtually where you can make an appointment through Navigate. I do not know if they have evening hours available. They also offer in-person tutoring on all of our physical locations. And they also do a kind of a math drop-in daily. And I believe that is both virtually and in person. So that's available. And also we have STEM 411, which is a free tutoring system. It's kind of like a chat type thing where if someone is manning that particular system, then you can go in and chat with them and they'll answer your question on the spot. If not, you can leave the question, and then when someone comes into the room, they'll answer it and respond to you. Okay, so there are plenty of resources to help you be successful in the course. And again, really your first line of defense should be me. I've hit the high points of the course syllabus, but you may want to read it in its entirety to kind of understand completely what the expectations of the course are. Again, your syllabus quiz or orientation quiz is due by Sunday, which is January the 15th at 11:30 p.m. I do want to show you how to navigate the course, kind of where everything is, what's available in the course. But do you have questions before I do that? And I'm going to stop the share for just a minute so I can kind of see your faces or see if anybody raises their hand. Okay. I am then going back to sharing my screen and I want to navigate over to the course. Again, I anticipate that you know how to get to D2L, but just in case you don't, you go to the georgiahighlands.edu homepage. Under quick links, you go to D2L course access. Typically, you would have to log in. I am already logged in. You would log in with your Georgia Highlands email and your password. You would have all of your courses you're taking this semester visible. All of mine happen to be statistics courses. And then you select statistical analysis for business. Okay, so you have the landing page. At the top of the landing page, you do have these widgets or tabs: course home, content, assessments, communication, grades. So those are available. On the left-hand side of the page are the announcements. So there is, and I noticed a couple of typos, which I tried to correct earlier. I noticed, but you have the welcome from me, which has some of my biographical information. It has information about the course and some words of wisdom about using this particular format. Then there's also a second announcement already posted. It has the Zoom link. The Zoom link will be the same for the entire semester, and it does not require a password. So you may want to bookmark it or know that it will always be here in the announcements. I do try to post announcements at least weekly, and I'm trying to remember if I have those set to come out on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure which, but they should be reasonably consistent. But if I need to make a change or something like that, that's probably where you'll find it. On the right-hand side, you'll see the content browser. Okay, it has all of various folders. This is sort of like your file cabinet or your notebook where all of your files are. You have Start Here. We'll come back to that one in just a minute. You have Academic Excellence folder. These are some resources really from outside Georgia Highlands that the University System of Georgia provided when COVID hit, but there's still some good resources, so we've left them in the class. Student resources are the resources that are available specifically at Georgia Highlands. You do have some wellness resources that the institution provides. I have the contact information. It has my contact information. It has the chair of the Business and Professional Studies School. It has the dean of the School of Business. It has the provost and the president of the college. So should you need or want to contact any of those people. I am housed under the School of Business and Professional Studies. You are earning your Bachelor's of Business Administration. So all of our statistics courses fall under that umbrella. Also under student resources, again, are some of the student success resources that are available, whether that be stuff related to academic advising, if you have technology issues, the tutoring options, STEM 411, the library. So this takes you out to that page and you can access or link to those resources. The exam testing information, it provides you with information related to Respondus Lockdown Browser. So it also walks you through how to access a test through Respondus Lockdown Browser. So that information is available. Zoom recordings, this is probably going to be an important folder. The Zoom recordings, they're sorted by units, and this is where I will post the links to the videos or the links to the recordings like the one we're making now. And so you'll be able to find those there. So they're under the folder Zoom recordings. I already have the instructions available for the different analyses and things we'll be using in Minitab. So those are there. Not only will we walk through them in class, they're also usually on the PowerPoint for the lesson, and they're in this particular Word document. Again, they're sorted by modules or by units. The course is set up with 4 units, and under each unit, there is an introduction to that unit. And the introduction just kind of gives you an overall view of what are we going to be talking about in this particular unit. It gives you an overview of the lessons. And then we have the objectives for the course overall, and then the specific objectives for that particular unit, the things you're going to be expected to know or be able to do at the end of that particular unit. Then for each lesson or topic, there is a landing page. So the first lesson under Module 1 is data and visualization. And again, you get kind of an overview synopsis of that. You get kind of a checklist of the things we're going to do. And then you have the PowerPoints. You have access to those PowerPoints 24/7. They are the PowerPoints that I'll be using during our instruction, during our discussions. So those are already available. There are extra notes. If I've found that students struggle with a particular topic, I've added in resources. For example, in this first unit, it really, a lot of this information in this unit on data and visualization is review. But realizing that some of you may not have had statistics in a while, you may have forgotten it. So I've actually pulled resources that I use for Stat 1401 into this course so that you have that extra content, that extra information in case you've forgotten something. And then you have the link to the homework quiz for that particular lesson. The other thing, let me go back. So that's the setup for each lesson. I also have here the additional PowerPoints and videos. In that folder, there are videos of the lessons that were made by my colleague. It's a different, most likely is a different set of PowerPoints. So for that lesson, for example, I would have the videos that she created. And then if there are different PowerPoints that she created, those are available. So if I go over here to descriptive statistics, missing data, and outliers, and it's thinking about it really hard. See, there are PowerPoints there, and these PowerPoints are different from the ones that I use. So again, if you need or want that extra help, it's there. I will tell you that a lot of these in this folder are very technical. You kind of get in the weeds and get a little bit more detailed than really you may need to be. They're good, but again, it may be more information than you really need. But if you are one of those that you want to dig a little bit deeper, look at all your options. Those are available as well. So do you have questions about any kind of navigation? I do try to provide, if you'll notice in this announcement, I did try to provide links to the assignment so that you can simply click on it. So it's very easy for you to access. I work really hard to make sure that those links work. If for some reason they don't, primarily all of your content is under the tab Assessments, and you're either going to be using assignments or quizzes. Quizzes would be where you would find your homework. You have all the listing of all the quizzes: orientation quiz, respondents lockdown browser quiz, quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3. So under assessments and then quizzes, but also assessments and assignments is going to be another location that you use, because that is where you will submit your projects. Okay, the projects that you work on outside of class and submit go into these various folders. So those are the two things. And again, I try to provide the links. I try to ensure that they work, but sometimes I miss one or something happens and it gets broken. Questions? Okay, I want to do a poll to ask you a question so I kind of get an idea of where we are. And then we're going to kind of dive into module 1. So I'm going to launch this poll, and I'm asking you the question: how long has it been since you took Stat 1401? Okay, then you can choose your response. And I'll give you a minute to respond. Okay, so looks like for the majority of you, it's been about a year. A couple of you had it more than 3 semesters ago, and then 2 of you had it about 2 semesters ago. Okay, so the reason I do that, or I ask that question, is because honestly, really a lot of the first unit and the second unit, the content is really, I don't want to say the same, but it's a carryover from Stat 1401. So hopefully, if you've had it, some of you that maybe it's only been 2 semesters, you may remember some of it. If it's been, more than a year, you may not remember it. So again, we go a little bit deeper into some of the conversation, but hopefully a lot of this content in this first unit is stuff that you maybe have at least seen previously. Okay. But I also realize that that may not be the case because it's been a while for some of you. All right. Any other questions before we pick up on the content? And again, I do most of the talking unless you interrupt and ask a question, because I want to get through the content for you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to begin with the introduction to Module 1. Okay, so Module 1, we really didn't give it a title. It just has a variety of topics. It's intended to kind of be a quick review of concepts from Stat 1401. So these first 3 lessons are hopefully, for the most part, things that you learned at some point but may have forgotten. A lot of times you may want to think, well, when and where will I use statistics? Well, guys, you cannot hardly turn on the television, listen to the radio, even looking at the internet. Even if you're just looking at your social media feed, you'll get sometimes little things pop in, news reports and things like that. So you see them there. Newspapers and magazines. And that's how most people get familiar with the various media, or excuse me, with statistics and probability. So I have some examples. For example, crime. Atlanta has already seen 100 homicides in 2022. Okay, so I was putting this particular assignment together in fall, so we were looking at 2022. And I give you where that came from, an article on the 11 Alive news website. Business. Over the last 12 months, grocery prices soared 13.1%, the largest annual increase since the year ending in March 1979, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said Wednesday. I got that one from CNN. Education. For the 4th year in a row, Georgia public school students outperformed their counterparts in the nation's public schools on the SAT, recording a mean score of 1,077, 39 points higher than the national average for public school students. That came from the Georgia Department of Education website, and it was looks like it was part of a press release. Politics. The survey of 950 Georgia adults, including 753 registered voters, found Kemp holding a 1-point lead over Abrams, 45% to 44%, statistically considered a tie, and that was from Northwest Georgia News. And then real estate. Median U.S. home price exceeds 400,000 K for the first time, reports find, and that was from Fox Atlanta. So again, you can see their variety of media. All of these were from the internet. That's because I was pulling them from there. But again, we are inundated almost on a daily basis with statistics. And you may have heard one of the buzzwords now that you hear is we're trying to make data-driven decisions. So a lot more companies and organizations are trying to look at the data, maybe what has happened in the past, that kind of thing, to predict what is going to happen in the future. And so they're using data to help them make decisions. Again, we're inundated with it through the media, but it's also in almost every field of human endeavor. Even from the idea of buying a house, managing a budget, or even within your profession. I mean, with with logistics and supply chain or healthcare management, you're going to be given statistical information at some point. And you may even be asked to analyze that information in a thoughtful and meaningful way. And so Stat 1401, the introductory statistics course, coupled with this course, at least gives you a basic foundation to help you do that. The fields of economics, business, psychology, education, biology, law, computer science, early childhood require, just to earn your degree, require at least one course in statistics. Now, for Georgia Highlands, for the BBA, you kind of require two, because you take Stat 1401 and then you take this course, which is Business 3000. You ultimately, if you're given the data and asked to thoughtfully and meaningfully look at that data and make a decision or interpret that information, you are the one that's going to be responsible for making a decision about whether a claim or a fact is correct, valid, is it a good one? Should you really believe what they're telling you? And the statistical methods can help you in making that, quote, educated guess. Okay, because we can't necessarily predict the future, but if we have information about what has happened in the past, we maybe can get a better sense of what could, or maybe even should, happen in the future. But ultimately, you are the one for doing that. Even if you're just reading information that someone else has provided, you've got to decide, do you really believe what they're telling you? So why should you study statistics? I mean, we're going to for the next 15 weeks, so why should we do that? One is oftentimes in certain areas, especially in health-related fields, they like their workers, nurses, doctors, even teachers, educators, those kind of folks, to be current, meaning they want you to kind of know what's going on in the field. Maybe there's some new shipping method or some, new method in healthcare that could be a benefit or could be cost effective. And so you typically might be asked to read that information. And the way we do that is we read professional journals or articles that others have written about the research they've done. And you need to be able to understand what you're reading. And we do that. You need a basic knowledge of the vocabulary, symbols, concepts, and the statistical procedures, which you can gain from this course. You can have that basic understanding so that you can read and understand those studies. But also, in some cases, you may be asked to conduct the study yourself. You know, to conduct research in the field. Maybe you're asked to decide, you know, which shipping mode or which shipping method is better, or which company would be better. And so you need to be able to know how to set up your experiment from the beginning. How do you pose the question? How do you go about collecting your data? How do you organize it, summarize it, analyze it, and come to a conclusion or come to an answer that you could provide to your supervisor, to your boss, to your company, to help them be more successful and more profitable. Finally, in general, it can just help you be a better consumer or a better citizen. Again, because you have that knowledge, if you're listening to a news report or reading an article in the newspaper or on the internet, again, you become the authority. Do you believe what they're saying? Did they perform their research in an appropriate manner? Again, and you can kind of have that sense based on the things that you're going to learn in this course. So it helps you overall to become a better consumer and a better citizen in making your own personal decisions, not just decisions related to your employer or to the work that you do. So in Module 1, in the first lesson, we're going to review and extend basic vocabulary as it relates to data and visualization. In Lesson 2, we're going to review and extend information related to descriptive statistics. And then in Lesson 3, we review and extend probability concepts related to what are called random variables. So again, this module really hopefully is a review and extension of concepts that you already know. Now again, I don't have the wool pulled over my eyes. I do realize if it's been more than a year, you may have very well forgotten those. So I try not to assume that you remember everything. Okay, questions before we move on? All right, so we're going to take a look then at data and its visualization. And I'm going to be reviewing some of the terminologies and things that hopefully you can recall from Stat 1401. So data and its visualization. Most research begins with a question. Let me go out to a piece of paper so I can kind of make you a few notes here because I don't think this is on the PowerPoint. Okay, so most research begins with some sort of question. There is something that I want to know about. Okay, there's something that I want to know about. And it could be as simple as I want to know what is the average age of a Georgia Highlands College student? What is the most popular major at Georgia Highlands? What is the most popular eye color for people living in the state of Georgia? So it can be as simple as that, but it can be as as detailed too, to think about, okay, which shipping mode is most reliable? Which shipping mode is most cost effective? And then you got to kind of think about those two things together. So most times research, or really all the time, research begins with a question. There's something that you want to know about. That thing that you want to know about is called the variable. Okay, the variable is the what. Okay, and again, that could be anything from eye color, major, height, weight, blood pressure, which shipping mode, the the weight of the package. It could be the destination of the package. It could be gender of a patient. So the variable is what you want to know about. Again, typically, since that's what we want to know about, it's unknown to us. We don't know what the answer is, but it's also random. There are different options or different values that it could take on. We do typically also use, like we do in algebra with a variable, we do typically use the letter X to represent that unknown value. So we pose a question, and when we pose that question, then I should be given a response. For example, if I were to say, Colby, what color are your eyes? I would hope that Colby would provide an answer, and that answer is my data. The data is the response to the question or to the variable. Okay. So I want us to talk about data for just a minute, and that's kind of where we are on the PowerPoint. Data, again, is the actual responses or values that you get when you ask about that particular variable. Whether I ask, what is your eye color? What is your age? What is your height? What is your major? What's your favorite soft drink? Those responses are my data. So for eye color, I might get responses like blue, green, hazel, brown. Height, 5'4", 5'6", 6'2". Age, salary, political affiliation. Okay, so the data is basically the information, the responses to the variable. That data can be classified or grouped according to its characteristics. There are really two ways to classify or group data, but knowing what type of data you have from the beginning of your research is important, because that determines for you what kind of statistical analyses you can and cannot use for that study. And we're going to look at how to classify data using the two different techniques, but it's classified by its characteristics. If you look above here at these examples, you'll notice in some cases we have words. In other cases, we have numbers. And I hope that it makes sense to you that I can do a whole lot more with numbers than I can with words. Now, that's not to say that the data that involves words is not useful. It's just I'm limited in what type of statistical analysis I can or cannot do. So it's important to know the type of data that you have from the beginning. Okay, so again, there's two different ways to classify or group the data. One is by type, and I'm going to go over, this is on the PowerPoint, but I'm going to go over and draw this for you so that hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense than you just seeing it kind of scrawled all over the screen there. Okay, so let's talk about data for a minute. Okay, there are two types. Really, it comes out to be three, but initially there are two types of data. You have qualitative data and you have quantitative data. If you look at, let's talk about qualitative first. If you look at qualitative, it is the adjective form of the word quality. So qualitative data describes some kind of quality or characteristic. It's also sometimes referred to as categorical data because it involves categories. It is definitely words or phrases. So if you go back to the example that I just had on the screen, eye color and political affiliation would be qualitative data. It's like it's a label. Now, it's sometimes numbers, and this really bothers students because qualitative data, again, we often think categories is going to be words, but it could sometimes be numbers, but it's numbers that we do not calculate with. For example, each of you has a Georgia Highlands College ID number. That ID number is how you are tracked in our computer system or labeled in the computer system. Just in case there are two people with the same name. For example, when I was in college at the University of North Georgia, I was a senior, and at that time my name was Laura Evelyn Chadwick. So Laura E. Chadwick. I was a senior, and another student enrolled as a freshman, and her name happened to be Laura Elizabeth Chadwick. So that her name was also Laura E. Chadwick. Now, that is probably highly unusual. And the reason I know this is because her grades as a freshman ended up on my transcript when I was a senior. So if you have that issue and you're using names only, that could be challenging. So we use ID numbers, but I wouldn't try to find the average of your ID numbers. I wouldn't take all of the ID numbers of the 7 of you that are present or 6 of you that are present and add them together and or subtract them or whatever. Your social security number would be a label. That's how the government tracks you. Your driver's license number. Again, that's how the government tracks you. If you play a sport, you know, if I say, well, what basketball player wore number 23? I would anticipate that somebody could tell me it was Michael Jordan. So labels like on jerseys for football, baseball, soccer, whatever sport, your bank account numbers, your PIN numbers. Okay, so a qualitative data can sometimes be a number, but again, it's a number you wouldn't calculate with. That's primarily being used kind of, again, just as a label, kind of as a tracking number. Okay, so you have, let me make sure I've said everything, categorical words and phrases, sometimes numbers. Yeah, okay, so that's qualitative. Then you have quantitative. Quantitative is the adjective form of the word quantity. Quantity makes me think of numbers. Sometimes this is called numerical data. It is always numbers, but it's numbers with which we can calculate. We can put them in order. It's usually associated with some kind of count. And typically if it's a count, you'll see the word in the description. It'll say the number of. What's the number of phone calls you got today? The number of children you have. The number of gallons of milk that you drank today or that the cow produced today. So usually it's a count or it's a measurement. And when you think about measurement, think about, again, things like the number of inches of rain we have, the wind speed, the temperature, height, weight, blood pressure. Now, quantitative data can actually be broken down into two additional categories, because I mentioned to you that we actually ended up with three options. And so quantitative breaks down even further. You have discrete and continuous, so that ultimately your three categories are qualitative, quantitative discrete, or quantitative continuous. Quantitative discrete is going to be usually ones associated, and I've got my pen in the wrong place, associated with a count. Again, so that you'll see that phrase number of, and it's whole units. Okay, there's no fractions or decimals. With continuous is usually associated with measuring. So you would use some sort of measuring tool, maybe like a ruler or a thermometer, some sort of scale. Again, think about continuous, think about it being on a continuum, something that's continuous. So if I'm thinking about a measuring tool and it goes from 0 to 1, I could break that down into half units or into quarters or into eighths. I could go down into sixteenths. So I can keep breaking it down into smaller and smaller units. Think about time. We go from, a year to months to weeks to days, hours, minutes, seconds. We could even go to milliseconds or microseconds. So typically with continuous, you're going to have fractions or decimals. So when you think about data in terms of type, again, you have three categories. You have qualitative, quantitative discrete, and quantitative continuous. Now I'm gonna toggle back over to the PowerPoint and show you that I do have all of that information that we just went through is on that slide. Okay, but it may make more sense the way that I presented it. There is a second way that we also can classify data. The second way is by the level of measurement. Okay, so way number one, or the first method, is by type. The second method is by level of measurement. And for this, I want us to think about it as a set of steps. And there are 4 levels. So I'm going to have 4 steps. And the interesting thing about this particular thought process is the further you are up the steps, the more you can do. Okay, so at the lowest level, there's very little analysis that can be performed. But as you get up higher on the staircase, there is more analysis that you can do. So you really would like to be further up the steps, but that's not always possible. So I'm going to give you the 4 levels. You have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Now, there is a connection between the level of measurement and the type. If you imagine an imaginary line between the second and the third steps, the first 2 steps are qualitative data only. Okay, the first 2 steps are qualitative data only. This top 2 steps are quantitative only. So if I know that my data is qualitative, then it's either going to be nominal or ordinal. On the other hand, if I know that it's quantitative, whether it's discrete or continuous, then it's either going to be interval or ratio. And we're going to talk about the characteristics of each one of those levels. Nominal, you may not know, is the adjective form of the word name. So at the nominal level, you basically have a label only. There's no order. There's no sense of, one is better than the other. Being a logistics and supply chain management major is not better than being a healthcare management major. Being female is not better than being male. Having green eyes is not better than having blue eyes. So nominal is just a label, and there is no sense of order. The word ordinal is the adjective form of the word order. So ordinal, you have labels, okay, which means you're most likely going to have words, But now there is I gotta say it right, subjective order. Now, by subjective, that means that it's open to interpretation. Okay, so ordinal, you still have categories or words, and now you have a sense of order. A good example is if you've ever taken a survey and you have the options strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. That is ordinal data. They're words, so it's qualitative, and using disagree is worse than agree, or even strongly agree is better than agree. So there's a sense of order. Think about movie rankings. You have G, PG-13, PG, R. Any kind of like cooking contest, like a barbecue competition, a chili cook-off, where you're being judged. That's where the subjectivity comes in, because, you know, it kind of depends on the judge's taste buds. You might go to one barbecue competition and the judges may love your barbecue, but you go to a different one the next week and they hate it, because you have different judges who have different taste buds. So it's open to interpretation. Now, in both cases with nominal and ordinal data, and I didn't say this, but let me go back and add it here. With nominal data, because it is qualitative and it's just words, there are no calculations you can perform. With ordinal data, there's really no calculations, but again, you do have that sense of order. But again, that ranking is subjective again to the interpretation of the researcher or the person that's looking at it. As you move to that third step, okay, the third step is interval. I don't have a fancy word for that one, but now we're dealing with numbers. Those numbers can be ordered. I can say one is more or less than the other, so you can do a comparison. And we can add and subtract with these numbers. So there's less, and really the order here is now it becomes objective, because I know that 5 is bigger or more than 1. So, you know, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no interpretation to the rankings. The one characteristic of the interval level that oftentimes just gives students the fits is this. At the interval level, the data has no, true, 0. Now, what does that mean? In my mind, when I hear the word 0, I think that means I don't have anything. I have nothing. I have none. But at the interval level, 0 does not mean none or nothing. It is simply being used as a placeholder. And I'm going to scroll down for a minute to try to give you some examples, because again, this is one of those areas, that one concept that just gives students the fits. So let me scroll down here. If we're talking about, again, that interval level, some examples might be, we might look at the year. I know that this year is 2023. I know that my daughter was born in 2007, that I was born in 1968, that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But guys, how do I know that it's really 2023? At some point, humanity had to begin marking off the years. So at some point, there was a year zero. Now, to have year zero does not mean there was no year. There was a year, but that's where we began marking off the years and began counting. So dates like that year is interval. The zero does not mean there was no year. Another good example of interval data is something like an IQ score. If you score 0 on an IQ test, that does not mean that you have no intelligence or no brain. It probably means either you're not a good test taker, or perhaps you do have some learning challenges. Okay. I'm trying to think, there's a third example. Oh, the third example that, again, that we often think about in this particular concept is temperature. Temperature is at the interval level. If I tell you that it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit outside, that does not mean there's no temperature. It means it's really, really cold. And we can talk about having temperatures above or below 0 degrees. And so sometimes that can help you think about an interval, because you could have values above or below, kind of above sea level, below sea level. Questions before I move on to the next level, or the final level? Okay, the last level is ratio. Ratio is also numbers. We can still order those numbers, and we order them objectively. We can compare them. At the ratio level, we can actually add, subtract, multiply, and divide. We can perform all 4 basic mathematical operations. We can even begin to kind of get percentages, that idea of a ratio or a fraction. The other characteristic of ratio that's important is that at the ratio level, we have the true 0. At the ratio level, 0 does imply none. If I say I received 0 phone calls today, that means I had none. If I say I have 0 eggs in my basket, I have no eggs. Now, sometimes that's a little wonky to think about because, again, if you think about if I tell you that I am 0 years old, that really means that the person does not exist yet. So you have no person. So 0 in that context does mean none. If I tell you that the something is 0 pounds or 0 ounces, I have nothing. If I have a height of 0 inches, I have no height. So it is a little wonky to think about it. But again, you have to stop and think, what does it mean when you say, I have none? Does that imply 0 or does it mean something else? Okay, so there are 4 levels of measurement. Again, I've kind of drawn them out for you, given you the details, but that same graphic is on the PowerPoint. Questions? I know that some of the questions, if not all of the questions on your homework quiz for this lesson are going to ask you to classify data. You have to decide, is that variable, that data, qualitative, quantitative discrete, or quantitative continuous? And then you also have to decide, is it nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio? And I hope I may have some examples at the end. If not, I'll see if I can find us a few to look at. Okay, so let's continue, unless you have a question. Again, I hope a lot of that sounds familiar, but if it's been a while, it may not. Okay, data in today's world. In virtually every type of company, regardless of what industry it is, whether it's the carpet industry, you know, the egg production, milk production, medications, whatever, regardless of the industry and their size, companies are inundated with data on a daily basis, and so are you. Again, you can't hardly turn on the television without hearing some statistic, whether it's the temperature outside or how much rain we got or the chance of rain, or, you know, how many flights were delayed because of the FFA corrupt file yesterday. So companies are inundated with data on a daily basis. We kind of call that big data, meaning it's lots and lots of information. And companies can use that big data to look for patterns, maybe patterns in sales, patterns within the shipping cost, patterns within the cost of eggs, other trends. You know, does a particular group buy a particular product or have a particular health issue? So we can analyze, look at the data to try to find those patterns, trends, and connections between the variables. Again, big data is very large, diverse sets of information where we pull it from a variety of sources, and it just keeps growing. Okay, it just keeps coming at you. It's not necessarily how much data you have, but it is important what you do with it. Okay, I can get data from anywhere. I can Google and find data sets. There are websites that actually maintain data sets. Okay, so you can take data from any source and analyze it to find answers. Now, hopefully you have a good source, but again, it's not so much how much you have, but what you do with it and how you analyze it and interpret it. There is a career, and it's actually a growing career in the field of data science, and data scientists may work for companies, they may work for other organizations like the CDC or the FBI, but they spend 50 to 80% of their time organizing and preparing the data before it can be used. Sometimes when you get a data set, oftentimes people will talk about cleaning the data set or scrubbing the data set. Maybe you are missing some data, and so you want to eliminate any of the any of the participants where you have missing information. But it's important, that your data is as accurate and is as complete as possible. And in terms of organizing it, oftentimes we use a lot of visual tools to do that. We use pictorial or graphical presentations of the data. So when we begin to create and organize our data into a table or into different types of graphs, that's called data visualization. We are visualizing what's going on with the data. And so we're going to be talking about, I think it's next class in more detail, about the different types of pictorial or graphic presentations we can make. Guys, even if you look at, let me see if I can go out here and Google it for a minute. Let me see whether, whoops, whether, come on, I can't spell. Okay, even something as simple as this, where they use pictures and they give you kind of the low and the high and stuff, that's considered a pictorial display. They also kind of give it to you in a line graph if you want to look at it that way. We can talk about, the chances of precipitation, what the wind's going to be. Again, so there's lots of different ways to present data. We may want, if you want to look at the stock market, you can see line graphs where it shows it going up and down. You can see data tables maybe where it gives you, this is kind of a weird one, where they show you whether a stock went up or where it went down. So there's lots of different ways to display data. And so we're going to be looking at in more detail next class what some of those graphs and representations are. But a couple of things to think about when you are creating those visual representations. Again, data visualization is a pictorial or a graphical representation of the information and your the information and or your data. It probably does not use a lot of words. It maybe uses either bars or lines or pictures, and it's a quick way for you to see and kind of get an idea about the trends or patterns. Is something going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Are there any outliers? Outliers are those data values that just don't seem to fit with the rest of them. So the data visualization, those graphs and pictures help us to get a very easy and quick way to see what's going on. And they're used a lot on the television, on the internet, and even the newspaper to help people get the information. It's used universally across all industries and all countries. You'll oftentimes see them, especially on the internet and television, you may see them in color to designate different things, but also they can be eye-catching. You know, something catches your eye because you see a particular color or something like that. And it helps you tell your story. Think about reading a storybook and the pictures that accompany it. You know, and oftentimes the picture itself, this shows what's going on with the words, especially if you're looking at those for early aged children. Again, there's lots of different ways to present data, and you have to kind of walk a fine line to determine what's the best way. And you may create multiple ways and then decide that one is better than another. So it's kind of a balancing act between form and function. You know, is one form better than another, but then does it communicate the information that you want communicated? It is actually considered a visual art because it can grab a person's interest and keeps your eyes kind of on the message. Again, that idea of telling the story with the pictures. It's important because, again, it helps you to communicate lots and lots of information very quickly. And you know as well as I do, most people in today's world, we're always in a rush. We're trying to get from point A to point B, you know, get all our stuff done. We're always in a hurry. So the data visualization, the graphs and tables help us to understand that data quickly, communicate it quickly. Research tells us that humans can process visual images 60,000 times faster than text. If we look at a picture, we can learn a lot more, know a lot more, 60,000 times faster than if I'm just reading text, reading words. It enhances the communication between your stakeholders and can lead to faster decision making. Again, because you're communicating a lot of information in an organized way, and again, communicating a lot of it at one time, you know, your board of directors, your boss, or whatever can see and what's going on a lot quicker, and hopefully that leads to a faster decision. Again, it helps us to see relationships and patterns within the data. Again, is something going up? Is something going down? Is it staying the same? What is the relationship between, you know, what happened last month and what happened this month? Again, it can highlight those trends in the data. It's a way to communicate that story. Images speak louder than words. You know, there's an old adage or old saying that says pictures are worth 1,000 words. Again, so images or pictures speak louder than words. And again, sometimes those graphs can indicate areas where maybe you're lacking. Either maybe you're missing data, or that particular area needs some attention or improvement. You need to begin collecting that information, or, you know, maybe there's a problem with some step in the process that needs attention. So the plan is next week, then we will spend some time looking at the different types of graphs we can create. Hopefully I can get us access or get you access to Minitab, and we'll learn how to create some of those, and also begin how do you analyze those, because that's one of the first projects you have to do, is to create and then analyze with words, complete sentences. You have to analyze the graph or graphs that you create. So we have about 16 minutes left. So let me see first if you have questions. And while I'm doing that, I'm navigating over to see if I can find us some examples of pretty much what you're going to see on your homework. So you can type in the chat, you may unmute and speak. Okay, this is actually from Stat 1401, but it'll give you an example of kind of the expectation, how the questions are worded and what you're expected to do. So these are some examples of classifying or identifying the type of data. And I know that the first homework quiz has most of the questions are these type. I think there are a few true false, but for the most part, it's these type. And you're asked to determine what type of data you have and then the level of measurement. So you may want to unmute so you can speak, or if you can type fast enough, you can type into the chat. So our first variable is the number of books students carry in their backpacks. So would that be qualitative, quantitative discrete, or quantitative continuous? Okay, Kaylee says it is quantitative discrete, and she is correct. Okay, hopefully quantitative jumps right out at you because of the phrase number of. So it's going to be a number, so it's got to be quantitative. And then think about, could you have a third of a book? No, I either have a book or I don't have a book. There's no in between. So it is quantitative discrete. Very good. Okay, knowing that it is quantitative, and my thing has locked up, knowing that it is quantitative discrete or just quantitative, is it going to be interval or ratio? To make that decision, think about what would it mean if I said there are 0 books in the backpack? What would 0 mean in that context? And Kaylee says, and Annie says it is ratio, and you are correct. It is ratio. Okay, it is ratio, because to say there are 0 backpacks means there are none of them. And it's thinking about it really hard. Come on. Think about it a little bit harder. Okay, so next one. What is the weight of the backpacks when the books are in them? Okay, so would weight be qualitative, quantitative discrete, or quantitative continuous? Now I'll open up my chat where I can see it. Or somebody can unmute and speak. Again, I hope that you realize weight is a measurement, and Colby, you are correct. It is quantitative continuous. Annie, you're correct. Quantitative continuous is because quantitative weight, it's a measurement, and you could have 1/2 pound, 1/4 pound, and so forth. So there is It is quantitative continuous. Since it's quantitative, what would it mean if I said the backpack weighed 0 pounds? Is it going to be interval or ratio? It is ratio, Deidre. Okay. Annie, you're right. It is ratio. Okay. What about the colors of the backpacks that the students carry? Is that going to be qualitative, quantitative, discrete, or quantitative continuous? And let's see, I'm getting some responses. It is qualitative. Kaylee, Annie, Deidre, Maggie, thank you guys. It is qualitative. If it's qualitative, is it nominal or ordinal? It is nominal, Colby, you're right. Okay. Kendall, just one point. Usually when you think about qualitative, it's only qualitative. We don't worry about whether it's discrete or continuous. And it is nominal because having a red backpack is not necessarily better than having a blue one or a black one. One color is not necessarily better than another. So hopefully that'll gives you an idea of the expectation of kind of what you're going to see on your homeworks for this first test. Okay, and those homeworks are due by next Wednesday, which is January the 18th. The two most immediate things that I need you to do are the syllabus quiz and the Respondus Lockdown Browser quiz, and both of those are due by Sunday at 11:30 p.m. I hope you can take some time to kind of explore through the course, look over the syllabus in detail to see if you have any questions whatsoever. And if you do, you're more than welcome to email, call me, or you can ask next Thursday night. Thoughts, questions, concerns? I do realize it's only 7:53, but we are going to finish a little early. Hopefully no one is offended. All right, guys, if there are no questions, I will hang out for a couple more minutes. If you have questions, if not, you are free to exit the room, and I will see you next Thursday at 6 o'clock. You're welcome.